with everybody. We'll be sharing the recording with everybody at the end of this, and posting it to YouTube too. So let me introduce our amazing speaker. So I first met Janie during COVID. And that was definitely because I was using drink as a crutch during that time. I was like, this doesn't feel great. I was working very long hours, and that was what felt like my release, but actually became something that wasn't supportive or on my own side at all. So I met Janie during that time, and Janie has had the most extraordinary career. From being a backing singer for Wham, no less, to working in the music industry, to going on to be a Hay House author, which is probably one of the most prestigious wellness publishers in the world, a Radio 2 DJ. She hosts an amazing group called the Sober Club, and in that group is a huge array of people that have really gained the joy of ditching the booze with Janie's support and help. And whether you're a grey area drinker, whether you're just curious about finding out more, or whether you're somebody that wants to leave the booze behind and welcome in a new style of living, Janie is the person that will help guide you, and is completely, in my own experience, non-judgmental, incredibly supportive, very funny, and an all-round incredible woman. So I'm delighted to pass over to Janie. Now, just before I do that, just please put your questions in the Q&A box. And Janie's going to make sure that we've got time for answering all those Q&As. If something really urgent comes up as we're talking, or an observation, let us know, pop it in there. And I'm going to hand over to Janie now to kick us off.
Great. Thank you. Thank you so much, Lucy. I really appreciate it. It's so lovely of you to give me that glowing intro, and a massive hats off to you for doing this, for hosting this, because I think that really what this is all about is raising more awareness of the fact that you can choose sobriety. You can make a choice, and that life is so much better without the booze. But maybe that's a bridge too far for some of you straight away. But let's just kick into some of the stuff that I'd like to share. And then, as Lucy said, I'm really happy to answer any questions or comments. No question is a silly one. I remember having an awful lot when I first started out on this kind of journey. And it is totally non-judgmental. So I'd love to know what you would like me to talk about. So you're very welcome to pop up and ask questions. If I miss something in the chat because I'm kind of on a roll, then Lucy, you're very welcome to just interrupt me. At any point, that's completely fine. Where should we start? Well, I'll just share a little bit about my story, because I think it might be a little bit familiar with some of you. As Lucy said, I've worked on the radio for absolutely years. I'm the author of several wellbeing books. I was known, really for a long time as a kind of a queen of holistic living. I was talking about everything to do with well-being: organic food, skincare without chemicals, cleaning your home without chemicals, natural fabrics, everything. I was literally the queen of holistic health. And yet I was stepping around this huge elephant in the room that was alcohol. And now I think back, the cognitive dissonance there, it was just bizarre that I saw alcohol as my reward, as my treat. I'd had a really busy day. I've got 4 kids. I've been mega busy. And I saw my release, as Lucy said, my treat as going to the wine bar or wherever, if the kids were looked after, and downing, half a bottle of Sauvignon. And then by the time I got back and we had dinner, well, it'd be rude not to have another one. And that pattern went on for years. Now, it's really important to stress that I was never at rock bottom. I wasn't clinically dependent. I was still functioning fine. I mean, I say I wasn't at rock bottom. The technical term is high bottomed, how I wish. But I certainly, nobody else would have known I had any kind of an issue. I was functioning perfectly fine. I didn't ever really have hangovers. I didn't miss a day off work. I didn't drive under the influence. Everything was seemingly fine. But I knew I had a problem, a really big problem. And I would wake up pretty much every day at around 3 a.m., which is interestingly when the liver is trying to repair. And a little voice would say to me, what are you doing? This is not authentic with who you're meant to be. You're meant to be interested in health and well-being. You're sharing stuff with other people about holistic living. What are you doing? You've had way too much to drink again, and it's a Tuesday. What is going on? And I would kind of lie there with the ceiling spinning, and I would usually kind of realize in that moment, this has to change. This does not fit with who I am. It has to change. I need to stop. I will stop. I'm pretty good at doing stuff I put my mind to. I'll stop drinking. I commit to stopping drinking. And then I'd make a little deal with God, say a little prayer. God, if only I can have a hangover-free day and feel fantastic because I've got such a busy day. Please don't let me feel ill. Please let everything be okay. And then I promise I'll never drink again. And that went on for years because, God kept his side of the bargain and I didn't really have a hangover. Such was my tolerance. But then by about 6 p.m., the wine witch would be in my ear saying, don't be so boring. I mean, come on, you've had such a busy day. It's your reward. You get everything else pretty much okay. You've had a nice healthy meal. You've had your supplements. It's perfectly fine. Just have one. And I'd be straight back down that, as I now call it, booze elevator. It would all start all over again. And, now I think back, I remember that during that period, and it went on for a long time, a lot of years, I was aware that something had to change. So I tried all kinds of holistic therapies. In my TED talk, I joke and I say I did EFT, TFT, NLP, ABC, but nothing touched the surface, because every time I tried to raise the topic of, actually, I'm a bit worried that I'm drinking too much, whether it was a GP or a therapist or a practitioner, the answer would always be much the same. Well, seems pretty normal to me. 1 or 2 drinks. Might have been more, but obviously I fibbed. Seems normal, because alcohol is normalized in our culture. It is totally normalized, from the office party, the networking meetings, through to play dates, weddings, funerals, everything, from commiserations to celebrations, and absolutely everything in between. And the reason that I was having such an issue is that in the UK, certainly, I think we've been brainwashed really into thinking that there are 2 types of drinkers. So there are those that we know of who are at rock bottom. They're clinically dependent. They need medication or rehabilitation. They need clinical support. That was not me. Then we also think that there's the other end of the spectrum, completely happy social drinkers who just every now and then can't hold their beer, but pretty much all good. And I knew seemingly lots of those people, but that's not the truth. The reality is it's a spectrum. The term coined by Jolene Park in the US is grey area drinkers. We're somewhere on that spectrum. And as I say in my TED talk, at least 50 shades of grey, and none of them sexy. So I was somewhere on that booze elevator. And here's the really fantastic bit of news. If you are also on that booze elevator, you don't have to wait till you get to rock bottom. Oh my goodness, if only someone had said that to me. If only someone had told me how freaking fantastic life without the booze is. But nobody shares that piece, right? Nobody shares it. Why? Because, as Jason Vale once said, alcohol is the only drug we have to justify not taking. It's utterly bizarre. The stigma around stopping drinking, it's changing, thankfully, but for many years, people have been afraid to stop drinking because of the stigma, because of the sober shamers, because of what everyone else will say, because of the workplace culture, because of what their family will say. When you go round and, your parents or your brother, whatever it is, right? Oh, here's your usual. Oh, I'm not drinking. What? Do you have a problem? No, I don't have a problem. If I ever did, I don't anymore. But it's seen as an issue. The stigma is very, very real. So often when we give up, when we stop drinking, we are ridiculed. We're sober shamed rather than being congratulated. Just as you would if someone stopped smoking, everyone goes, yay, well done you. But when we stop drinking, when we begin to quit the booze, people can sometimes have a very different view. And that can often be, of course, because you're shining a light on their behavior. You're holding up a mirror to them. So, of course, it's very rarely about you. It's often about the other person. So what's interesting here then is that actually we think of alcohol as our ticket to having fun, to feeling confident, to being sociable. I know a lot of people who are concerned about stopping drinking because they're worried they won't be able to be social anymore. But that's ironic, because the truth of this is that alcohol is a depressant. Now, it may not actually be the cause of mental health issues and anxiety, but it most definitely exacerbates them without any shadow of a doubt. I did a really fascinating podcast with a leading scientist and psychiatrist, I think she is, or I forget. But anyway, an incredible woman called Dr. Anya Topiwala. I'm very happy to share the link with Lucy. And she had done a clinical study. She'd been the lead researcher on a clinical study around how alcohol affects aging. This particular study was around aging. Now, for us gals here, getting older, well, we all are, right? It's interesting to look at that link between how we age, how we navigate perimenopause and the menopause and beyond. And trust me, alcohol and the menopause are not happy bedfellows, I can absolutely assure you. So I was very interested in this research that showed that literally alcohol is aging, that the telomeres, the markers of aging, are impacted greatly by even one glass. So I was very interested to interview Anya Topiwala, but just before the interview, I was convinced that what she was going to say was, however, the research isn't conclusive, and we've all seen the articles, and it may be that lots of people think that a glass of red wine is good for the heart, so it's not conclusive. And I was convinced she was going to say that. In fact, she was incredibly hard hitting, and she basically said, no, it is 100% correct. It has zero benefits. Even one glass is aging. So, if you take nothing else away from this, it's the best anti-aging hack ever, right? But you know what? Even if it isn't, maybe I'm deluding myself that I look better now I'm sober. But whether I am or not, the real reason is I feel better about myself. And isn't that really all that matters? Who cares actually about anything else? Because it does come back to the fact that when you stop drinking, you're able to get back to the real you. And really, that's a huge benefit. I wish I could kind of bottle that one and sell it. But we do know the tide is turning. We do know that the sober shamers may not be long for this world in their attitudes, because, now there are so many more people talking about the benefits of choosing to be alcohol free and making this choice long before you hit rock bottom, making this choice because you want to focus on well-being, because you're curious, that lovely word, sober curious, you're curious about what life might be without alcohol. And so you should be, because I've got to tell you, the difference is incredible. So I always say, if this kind of resonates with you, and if a little voice is saying, I wonder, the question for you to ask yourself shouldn't be, how much, am I drinking too much? Am I an alcoholic? I mean, no, we don't need to Google those things. That's of no relevance, really. The question to ask yourself is simply, would my life be better? Or is it possible that my life could be better physically and emotionally without alcohol? Just that one question. Now, if you're someone who, I don't know, has a sherry at Christmas and perhaps one shandy in the summer if somebody offers you one, and then you don't think about alcohol again, maybe your answer will be, no, I'm good. In which case, fine, I'm not up for prohibition. But if a little voice says, actually, do you know what? I wonder if my life would be better without alcohol, then give yourself the absolute best gift ever and give this a shot. One of the things I talk about, as Lucy mentioned, was the joy of sobriety. And that word joy, Catherine Gray wrote a lovely book, The Unexpected Joy of Being Sober. And before I came across that book, the word joy, I didn't really know what that word meant. For me, joy was linked to children maybe, or something you felt in church, if you went to a charismatic church. That's how I thought of the word joy. I had no idea that you could feel joy in ordinary life. And honestly, it's just incredible that sobriety can bring you that. But in the early weeks, it doesn't feel like that. The reality is, if you're doing dry January, or you're in the early days or the early weeks, you might be feeling grumpy as hell. And you know what? That's normal too. It really is. It takes a little while for everything to kind of recalibrate, for everything to just kind of get for your brain chemistry to get back into gear. But let me just run through just a couple of the benefits, and then we'll go to some of your comments and your questions. I think that some of the obvious benefits that most people find are the things that you would hope for and you would imagine. So your skin will be a bit clearer, you'll feel a little bit more toned, you will have more energy, your eyes will be brighter, you'll have better sex, you'll have more clarity. That's a big one, actually. But there are lots of other things that come down the line that you really could never have even imagined, because, you know, being sober makes you brave, and it gives you a new sense of hope and, as I say, joy. So you often find that you go into things that you have been thinking about for ages, that there's been a project that you've been wanting to do for ages, but somehow you've just been procrastinating. And when you stop drinking, it's absolutely incredible how you get the clarity and you get the resilience and you get the motivation to be able to go after, you know, what it is that you say that you want. I will just give one little tip before I carry on, and that is, if you are doing this, never promise me that you'll never use the phrase "give up." Right, and the reason for that is because if we say, "Oh, I'm giving up alcohol," the unconscious mind thinks that we're depriving ourselves, as of course the rest of society does. "Oh, poor you, you'll be able to drink soon in February." But the reality is we're not giving anything up. There is nothing to give up, only gaining. So try and use a different phrase. Call it quitting, stopping, whatever, but ditching the booze. That's the title of my book. But don't use the phrase "give up," because you really need to work with your unconscious mind. And not only that, focus only on what you're going to be gaining. And if that feels hard right now because you're not seeing many benefits yet, start to look forward to what the benefits will be as we move forward. And I think that, you know, there's a school of thought here that says, well, first of all, we have to delve deep into why are we drinking. And I do look into that, you know, if I'm working with one-to-one clients or whatever I might be getting involved in, we definitely go back and we look at the whole trauma piece and the whole why piece. But the reality of it is that if we just get stuck in that train of thought that says, "Oh, this happened in the past and I'm busy and I've had this trauma and that's happened to me and that's happened to me," we'll end up never really making a change. But, you know, there's that lovely phrase, you know, whatever's happened to you in the past, there's that lovely phrase, "It's not your fault, but it is now your responsibility." And it may well not be your fault. You may well have had trauma, difficult times, grief, all kinds of things that can, in inverted commas, lead to you drinking more than you want to. But right now, literally right now, you have a choice to be able to take on that responsibility. And that's a wonderful thing, to be able to give yourself that gift of literally living your best life without the booze. So I'm very happy to share tips and answer all kinds of questions. Let me just have a quick look at the chat, or Lucy, if you want to bring up anything in the chat.
Okay. Loads of questions, tons.
Okay, I can see one here about I'll touch on this just as I see it, about alcohol-free drinks. One of the top tips that I give to everyone is keep the ritual, change the ingredients. The reason for that is that as adults, we do seek pleasure. We do like a nice drink. You know, it's if we've finished work, if it's a sunny day, if we're sitting by an open fire, whatever it is, it's all about the associations. It's about the ritual. It's actually never about the alcohol. I defy any of you to tell me that it's really about the alcohol. It will only be about the associations. So at least to start with, have something in a nice glass. I've had lots of clients have said to me, "Oh no, I'm fine with that. I'm stopping drinking and I'm really good with my tea. I'm fine. A cup of tea does it for me." Well, that's okay until everyone else is celebrating or something is going on and you've got your tea and everyone else is clinking glasses, and there'll be a little part of your unconscious mind that says, That's not really fair. And that's where it can all go wrong. So, at least to start with, give yourself that prop of a lovely glass. I don't know why glasses have to be named by the liquid that used to go in them, but never mind. Get yourself a nice glass and a really lovely alcohol-free drink. And as someone says here in the chat, there is such a huge range now of alcohol-free drinks. If you don't want a replacement, in inverted commas, fine. You know, there are fizzes, there are botanicals, there are beers, there's wines, there's every kind of alternative, but then there's also things like kombuchas and artisan tonics. So again, you absolutely will be able to make a choice. And you know, the savvy workplaces and businesses are the ones who fully understand that if they're having a works event, of course they need to provide alcohol-free drinks, just like it would be outrageous now. It's a dietary requirement. You would never offer, food and not provide something for vegetarians and vegans. Why would you do that? And it's just the same. You know, we aren't 12 years old. We don't want warm orange juice, right? So really good alcohol-free drinks are just really critical. That was a very long answer. Sorry.
To
that one. Right.
Great answer. And I think this is a really important one. So Anne-Marie's saying or asking, how do you give up drinking or ditching the booze, as you always say, when your partner still drinks and so does everyone else at home?
Yeah, I can't deny that it's difficult with any close relationships. But the way I recommend that you deal with this is that you actually don't, and this may seem a little odd, but in the early weeks, you don't actually share too much with your partner or the people that you live with. You can tell them that you're doing a challenge or that you're doing something for your health. You love their support, in that, okay, I won't be going to the pub, or please don't give me a drink of alcohol. I'm doing a bit of a challenge. So love your support. And the best way you can support me is X or Y. But don't get into the ins and outs of it all. The reason for that is they're not walking the same path as you. So although they might care about you and they might want to support you, they're not coming from the same place. So what can very often happen is you'll be forging ahead, you'll be doing well, you might get in from work after your second week sober, you've had a terrible day, you are really not having a good time, you come through the door, you exclaim how miserable you are, and your partner says, oh sweetheart, well, you've done so well, you've done two, I mean, come on, you can just have one, you're good now. And it's not that they mean any harm, they really don't, it's just not their perception. So you're much better off letting them know the minimum and then getting connected. That's a huge piece of the success, is to be connected with like-minded people. So you need a buddy, you need a community, you need other people who have been through the same thing. So obviously I run the Sober Club. That's one online community. It's not expensive, masses and masses of well-being and support. But if you were part of a community like that, you write a message on our group and you just say, I've had a terrible day. And rather than people saying, oh, well, you've done well, just have one, everyone will suggest ways of, okay, so let's think of something else. Can you go and have a bath with essential oils? Can you go for a walk? Can you go get into nature? Can you go and lie down just for 5 minutes? Can you write in your diary? What can you do? But do anything, surf the urge, do something, but stay sober, sweetheart, because you're worth it. So it's that cheerleader piece, and being connected with like-minded people is really the key. Back on the partner thing, a really good tip is, as I say, just to share with them that you're doing a health challenge. Don't even make it about sobriety, because obviously alcohol is so emotive, and the minute you bring alcohol in, it's, oh, do you have a problem? And it's so linked to emotions. It really doesn't need to be. So as you're doing this for you, if you think about it, so for example, one of my clients was perimenopausal or menopausal, and she was seeing a menopause specialist who recommended for her a 4 or 5 week program where she ate certain foods and she did some exercise and she reduced her drinking and various lifestyle things. Now, she went and told her partner that she was doing this menopause thing, which meant that she wouldn't be making dinner on Friday because she was doing something else, and she'd be out for yoga. And, oh, and by the way, don't pour me alcohol drinks because I'm not having those. And the response was, okay, right? It's not his or her thing, it's your thing. And you have to do this for you. what tends to happen, and I know I'm generalizing wildly, but what tends to happen is over time, when you really properly step into your sober identity, your partner or your close family members, they start to see something really special in you, and often they want it for themselves. I can't promise you that, but I've seen it happen a lot of times.
That's fantastic. And we've got so many questions coming in, Janie.
Okay, I'll try and answer them a bit more quickly, otherwise we'll run out of time. Sorry.
No, not at all. That's great wisdom.
Talk for England.
Great wisdom. So anxiety is the one that's come up a few times. Is that trying to understand, why does alcohol make you anxious? And why are you so much less anxious when you're not drinking?
Yeah, it's a very good question, isn't it? Because we think of alcohol as being the thing that's going to make us less anxious. You know, we turn to it when we're anxious, but actually alcohol is a depressant. What happens with alcohol is that we get this little dopamine hit. So we get this little, a nice little release of chemicals. Interestingly, for the scientists among you, you can research this and find that the dopamine kicks in a few seconds before you take your first sip. So isn't really it's all the associations around alcohol that give us that little dopamine hit, because we're seeking the pleasure, which we do as adults. You know, many of us are really addicted to dopamine, aren't we? We want to feel good, we want to feel high, and we definitely don't like feeling anxious and miserable. And that's just human nature. And it is one of the downsides of alcohol, of stopping alcohol, is that, I mean, there aren't really any downsides, but the reality is you do have to face all the emotions. And trust me, it gets easier. But at the beginning, it's a bit of a shock to the system, because many of us for many, many years have never faced emotions. As soon as we get angry or cross or feel guilty or shout at the kids too much or whatever it might be, we reach for the drink and we numb it out. So when we have to face it all, feel all the feels, as the expression goes, it can be quite full on. So the reason alcohol makes us anxious is that we get that initial dopamine hit because of the of the dopamine flowing, because of those associations. But then it very quickly does what alcohol does, which is just, it's a poison, it's a toxin. So it's not going to be good for us in any way. And then what's going to happen is, as that starts to wear off, the dopamine release, we start to get these kind of niggling feelings of anxiety. And that's when, typically we'd be reaching for another drink because it's worn off. So I tell you how I heard this described really, really well. Jason Vale was talking about kind of addiction and how bonkers it is, the way our brain works, really. But he was describing that if you've ever been skiing and you've had to put on really, really tight snow boots, because you have to wear them, and they're incredibly tight and they really hurt your feet. And then when you take them off, when you start to unlace them and you take them off at the end of the day, it's like, oh, the release of taking those shoes off is so fantastic. Nothing feels better than getting those snow boots off after you've had them on for however many hours. Like, you let your feet out. Oh my God, fantastic. But how bonkers would you have to be to put the snow boots on, twice a day just to get the relief, right? It's utterly bizarre. You're not going to do that. You're obviously going to want to feel balanced rather than putting the snow boots on just to get the good feeling. I don't know if that makes sense, but basically alcohol is very much linked to anxiety, depression. It's a neurotoxin. It affects us in a chemical way. And when we no longer have that coursing through our bloodstream, when we can start to actually like ourselves and do the things we say we're going to do, we start to feel more balanced. And we have to put back the good chemicals, by the way. It was really good food, particularly at the beginning. So if anyone's thinking, oh, I think I'll stop drinking and maybe I'll lose a few pounds and stop eating as well, absolutely not. It's really important to get fantastic nutrition when you do this, because you've got to support that brain chemistry.
Oh, fantastic. Now, somebody said in the chat that they'd been sober, alcohol free for 18 months, and then decided to have a drink, and ever since then have gone back to the routine of drinking. And just asked, how can I get back on the path I want to be on and stay on it?
Yeah.
That longevity piece.
Yeah, it's very common that, I hate that word relapse, but, that's what people mean, I suppose. It's really common that that will happen. Usually it's because we have, and it happened to me a thousand times. I went round the block. Oh my goodness, I can't begin to count how many times I stopped drinking and went back to drinking. And usually the reason is because we've made our decision to stop and we're relying on willpower. So let's say, for example, the kind of person that might decide to do dry January or sober October, they'll make their decision that they're going to set themselves this challenge and they're going to stop. Maybe they'll give money to charity or whatever, and they've got a strong sense of willpower, and they're someone who likes a challenge and they know that they will complete that challenge. They're the kind of person that does what they say they're going to do, so they'll complete that challenge, and it will be tough, and they'll be counting the days. Oh, thank God, it's only a couple of weeks till I can drink again. And then when that challenge is complete, literally they go straight back to drinking. They're patting themselves on the back that they did it, and they did, and then they're straight back into drinking. So the issue there was that they never got clarity on why they wanted to stop. So I always recommend that people look at what I call kind of both sides. So you need to look at the why, what is it that's wrong with alcohol, if you like? Why do I want to stop drinking? What do I want to get away from? So it's the getting away from is important. So that's where you might want to look at the logic. So really get to know yourself, the logic around alcohol. Don't just take my word for it. Read some of the material about it. Learn for yourself that even one glass of wine is not beneficial, and all the BS you read in the press about a glass of red wine is good for your heart. No, it really isn't. Have a grape. So really get clarity on that for yourself. Number one, the logic piece. So what you're getting away from. That's important. But then the other piece, which most people don't do, is focus, literally immerse yourself in the motivation, in the what is it that I have to look forward to? What am I going to be feeling more of? How is my life going to get better? And it's that motivational piece that is going to carry you through. So it's that phrase, emotions, not logic, inspire action. And that's why you can't use the phrase give up. You can't count till you can drink again. You can't keep looking back at alcohol with rose-colored spectacles. What you want to be doing is immersing yourself in things like podcasts and quit lit books and communities, going to bars where they serve alcohol-free drinks, having mocktails, writing yourself a lovely list of all the things you're going to do when you're feeling so different about yourself. So you literally focus on the future. And it's never too late to do that. So if you've had a period of sobriety and you've started drinking again, and now you want to get back, re-up, start again, set a challenge, minimum of 30 days, much better if you can do 90 days, much better, because you'll really see a lot more benefits, or even 6 months. But then don't see it as a challenge that's going to be completed. See it as a period of curiosity. Here's a nice word for you. I add in the word self-love curious. Yeah, because most people, if they're drinking more than they want to, don't have a huge amount of self-esteem. It's just the reality. I actually don't think it's possible, really. That is the total irony of my life. There I was, a Hay House author, presenter on Hay House Radio, interviewing all these top gurus about spirituality and self-love and meditation. And if you'd asked me about my personal, scenario, it's like, oh, don't be ridiculous. I don't do any of that. Of course I didn't, because I wasn't in any way authentic, because I was drinking all the time. So I was pouring toxic liquid in, right? So if you become self-love curious and start to feel excited about how much better your life is going to become, it really helps. And get connected.
I love that self-love curious. I absolutely love that. And I love that emotions not, what was it?
Emotions not logic, inspire action. You do need a bit of both, in fairness, but it will be the motivation that carries you through.
I love it. Okay, so we've got more questions, so we'll answer as many of these as we can before we finish today. All right, so let's go from the top in the Q&A box. So my husband doesn't drink, and some friends and family find it really odd. Is there something I can do to support him in managing that when it comes up in conversation with them?
Yeah, I mean, whether it's for you or for someone else, I think a really good tip is to prepare in advance. So know what you're going to say. So let's imagine that you're stopping drinking and you're going to be going out with friends, or you've got friends coming over or whatever. If they know you as a drinker, then because so many of us are people pleasers, and we hate upsetting other people or making them kind of feel uncomfortable. So it's quite a good idea to give them a heads up. So literally drop them a text or a message and just say, oh, by the way, I'm not drinking, or by the way, I'm doing an alcohol-free challenge, or I mean, you can say what you like. You can fib if you want to. I hereby give you my absolute permission, because all that matters here is you. So absolutely tell a fib if you like. I'm on antibiotics or whatever. It doesn't matter. But say whatever you want to say. Or a good one is, I'm not drinking. It's making me feel so much less anxious. But, you know, more for you. And a key piece here is to say, you don't have to worry about me, though. Got fantastic alcohol-free beer or great kombucha. So all good. So in other words, in that one sentence, you're kind of sharing an important piece of information about yourself that you need them to hear, but letting them know you kind of don't really want them getting involved. It's your thing. Okay. End of. And you have to kind of think around that. If you choose to be vegan and you go to a party, a barbecue, and all of your friends and colleagues and or whatever are all eating, you know, their burgers, and you have your vegan burger, are you still welcome? Well, of course you are. And if somebody comes over to you and says, well, what do you mean you're not having a beef burger? I mean, you can smile sweetly and move on. It's really not, it's nothing to do with them. What you put in your mouth is nothing to do with anyone else. That's what I mean when I say it's so ridiculous that alcohol worms its way into friendships and relationships and emotions. It's nonsense. So the less of a big deal you make of it with other people, the less of a big deal they tend to make. So give them a heads up wherever you can. And then once if you still confront sober shamers and they basically hand you a drink and say, oh, don't be so stupid, here's your usual, you just smile sweetly, put it down, you know, yeah, I'd love a drink, thanks, I'll have a water or whatever it is you want, and then change the subject, because it's none of their business.
And somebody's asked about social occasions, and it overlaps with what you've just said. How do I have fun or manage social occasions? I know DJ Fat Tony says, I go, I shine, I leave.
Exactly. Exactly. The whole idea that alcohol makes you have fun is actually nonsense. It's a wonderful bit of marketing. I mean, you've got to hand it to them. You know, this association with, if you're drinking, you're glamorous. If you're drinking, you're having fun. Can any of you think of any single piece of marketing for alcohol? We've all seen, you know, every Mother's Day, you know, it's all the cards have got Prosecco on them. If I try and buy a card for my 24-year-old son, it's not possible to find one without a thing of beer on it or something, you know. So the marketing around the glamour and the fun of alcohol is everywhere. But has anyone ever seen a piece of marketing that shows their customers after they've had some drinks? I don't think so. Because that would be a very different picture, you know, in the gutter, feeling terrible, waking up at 3 a.m, linked to 200 different illnesses. It's nonsense. Drinking alcohol doesn't make you fun. It may make you slightly lose your inhibitions and be a bit nuts. But I don't actually know anybody who looks back and says, I really preferred myself when I was drinking. I know plenty of people who say, actually, I saw a video of myself at that party when I thought that I was just fantastic and sassy, and my God, I'm embarrassed. I don't know anyone who really genuinely believes that they, you know, it's nonsense. You will have fun because if it's fun. If it isn't fun, it won't be fun with or without alcohol. Does that make sense? And you know, you may find that, I mean, there's this whole thing about, can you dance sober? Well, if you could dance before, yes. And you'll have a much better time because you'll be present, you'll have clarity. And, you know, people in the sober club are often saying, oh, I'm really worried, I'm going to a wedding or whatever, I'm nervous. And everyone will always say, well, be prepared that you might get bored. You might want to leave early, because it's not sober people that are boring. It's, that whole sober anagram of bores. Absolutely not. Drunk people are boring. They say the same thing over and over. But, do have an out clause so that you can leave early if you want to. I always recommend that. Make sure you can get a taxi early, or you're driving or whatever, because you might get fed up, and no one will notice you leave, by the way, because they're too busy drinking. So have an out clause. But in many cases, people in the sober club have come on the next day and they go, I can't believe it. I was absolutely rocking the dance floor. I had the best time ever. I was rocking till 1 a.m. Oh, and then I was able to drive my sister home because she was worse for wear.
Yeah, nice. Fantastic. Thank you so much. And a couple more questions. I didn't realize we'd get quite this many. Okay, so all right, I think this is a good one. So for those doing dry January, what effects might I notice in just 1 month without the booze?
Well, that would depend on whether you've been doing the pieces. It's not too late just to start, but the pieces, the work you have to do to see the most benefits are to eat really well. So nutrition is really key. So proper meals, no skipping meals, really good fats, really good protein with every meal. It's so important, because that's the brain chemistry piece. So that is really important. And if you're doing that,
GABA that you always talk about.
Exactly, the GABA, the serotonin, the dopamine, those chemicals that if we're not getting them, because our body is completely confused. It's like, what the hell is going on? Where's my dopamine hit? Where's my serotonin? So that's why sleep can be disrupted. And even though sleep would never be good, we have this perception that it's good because it knocks us out, right? But so if you're doing those pieces, you will feel more benefit than if you're not. So much better if you can have really good nutrition. There's a few key supplements that are really good to have in the early weeks. Your mindset is absolutely critical. So as I say, focusing only on what you're gaining. You don't use the phrase give up. You literally write yourself a little blessings list, as I call it, every day, noting down what little things have come about or felt good because you've chosen not to drink. They can be tiny things. For me, it was the fact that I could wash my hair without feeling dizzy. I think I used to have to do that for years. Like, oh my God, I feel dizzy. So tiny little things that you notice because you've chosen not to drink. And so you'll notice, hopefully, that you might, within 4 weeks, you may start to have a little bit clearer skin, clearer eyes. You may start to you may even see a little bit of your jaw tighten up slightly, tiny little things like that. You might have better sleep. It depends. People vary. You might, by 30 days, just start to be getting a little sense of hope. Just that glimmer of, I got up with a bit more energy, and I'm starting to feel like I'm able to be a bit more patient with my partner or my kids or my boss or whatever. You'll be starting to see those things. That's why it's such a good idea to do it for longer, because give yourself a chance to really let those benefits kick in.
And everyone's asking, what are the key supplements? We've had a few of those.
Okay, so yeah, the key supplements, again, as with everything, it does vary for everyone, but magnesium, I can give you a link if you're interested to the absolute best one, only because I've been researching this stuff for years and years and years. And with magnesium, all things are not equal. So the one you just go and buy may not do you any good at all. You need a specific blend of different types of magnesium. So I'm very happy to share the link with Lucy.
One, right?
Yeah. So okay. I'll share my link for that, because it's a game changer. It's a real game changer. It helps with anxiety. It helps with mood swings. It helps with sleep. It helps with balancing everything. It helps with joint pain. I had a load of joint pain in the first few weeks of stopping drinking. So my body didn't know what the hell was going on. So magnesium is key. I would say that vitamin C is good for everyone, but it's quite good to, while everything's recalibrating. Vitamin C and vitamin D are good for everyone. Then you want to look at B vitamins, because when you stop drinking, you need to be thinking about that kind of balance of B vits. L-theanine is one that people often talk about. I mean, I've got a whole blog post on the Sober Club, which I can point you to, Lucy, on supplements.
Fantastic.
Yeah, I'm absolutely happy to do that. It's really good to support. I mean, I didn't do any of that. And so it took me a lot longer to feel good. I'm glad now because I can look back and I can see what other people need. But if you can do those pieces from the start, it really helps. And don't forget things like fresh juices. You know, I don't know how many of you have got a juicer, but if you can go and make a green juice, you literally, it really hits the spot. If you've got a craving and you're thinking, oh, you know, and it's mid-afternoon or it's early evening, you've got that slump. If you go and make a green juice, it's unbelievable. It's literally like you've been plugged in, power straight to your cells, and nobody can drink alcohol after a fresh green juice. It's not possible.
Amazing, amazing. Oh gosh, okay, how are we going to pick one or two more questions? Sober dating, help.
Oh God, yeah. Yeah, that's a tough one because again, you're going to have to decide how important this is for you. So I know people who are, you know, are dating and they make it very, very clear right from the off. I don't drink. If you drink, it's fine. If you're happy to be with someone who drinks, but I'm just going to let you know that I don't drink. And actually, honesty and being upfront is probably the best way, because if you start out dating someone and you're kind of, you know, you're certainly, if you feel that you need to drink because they are, you've got to really ask yourself, is that going to work? I mean, for starters, a relationship that is only based on booze is bonkers, because you aren't yourself. You really aren't. You know, everyone's heard that phrase, well, she's not herself when she's drinking. Well, no, she really isn't. So I can't help you with that other than, you know, you got to be true to you. But that would be the same for any relationship advice, wouldn't it, really? Actually, love yourself first. And when you do, you'll make that work. You'll either attract the person who is also sober, or you'll attract someone who is happy to support you.
Mm. And I was just going to ask you, because it's one of the things that you shared with me that really has stayed with me in every area of my life. And I think if anybody's doing dry January, sober October, or longer term sobriety, or just wants to live their life more intentionally, your clean setup in the morning, such an
Yeah.
amazing tool. And it's simple, but it's really life changing, I think. So would you just
Yeah.
that looks
Yeah,
like?
it's an NLP technique. It's very, very simple. And the way it works is that you can use it, but you can use it for you know, a big life change. So wanting to be sober, you can use a clean setup, or you can use it just when you wake up in the morning for the day ahead, or for any meeting or whatever. So it's got a lot of uses. What it basically is 3 questions that you ask yourself. So the first question you can all ask yourself now is, what is it that I want? So what do I want? So obviously, if you've listened to this and you've been thinking, do you know what, I'm going to do this. So it might be, you know, be specific. So don't answer that question by saying peace, you know, or happiness. I mean, those things are lovely, but we want to be specific. So the answer might be, I want to be sober for a minimum of 30 days or 90 days. I would add in the word, you know, happily sober for 30 days or whatever. So you answer the question, what is it that I want? Again, if you've just got a meeting coming up, you might ask yourself, what is it I want? And the answer might be, I want a successful outcome to this meeting, right? So you answer the question, what do I want? The next question is the one that, because we're all pretty good at knowing what we want. We're relatively good at it. You know, if somebody says, well, what do you want from this? We're fairly good at saying what it is we want. But the next question is the really key one. Because the next question is, how do I have to be for that to happen? So what that question means is, where is my responsibility in this? And what would I have to do differently or act differently? And that's the key, because many of us are very good at saying, what do I want? Well, I want success and money and abundance, or, you know, what do I want? I want to be confident I want to look amazing at that event or whatever. But when it gets to the how do I have to be, that's when we have to say to ourselves, right, okay, so that's going to mean that I've got to change my attitude slightly, or I've got to do something differently, or I've got to prep ahead. And that's where we need to take responsibility. So it brings us back to recognizing that we have to be a certain way to attract what we want. And then the third question is, in order for me to be like that, for that to happen, what support or resources might I need? And that's where you can just remind yourself, well, actually, if I'm going to be like that, first of all, I've got to make a phone call and tell somebody something, or I've got to do that prep, or I've got to get the investment I need, whatever. Does that help? Did I explain that well enough?
Yes, I think that's fantastic, and I'm so sorry that that the oh, I'm going to just give you this one because I haven't given you any controversial ones. But what are your thoughts on evidence supporting the old Mediterranean diet as one of the healthiest, which includes a glass of wine a day? Is it possibly the pesticides now in our wine rather than the wine itself?
Oh, an interesting question. It's a very interesting question. I think that when we see these studies, and we do see them a lot, that say that people who, you often see studies that say, oh, that these people live a long time because they're on a Mediterranean diet, and studies show that they have a glass of red wine or whatever. There's two things here. One is it one glass of wine? I wonder. But the other piece is my view on this, and the view of Dr. Anya Topiwala, because it is something I discussed with her in that podcast interview, is that those people are healthy despite the alcohol, not because of it. They're healthy despite the alcohol. They're healthy because they're having all of that fantastic food, all the good omega-3s, all the supplements, everything else, beautiful sunshine, hopefully, good relationships. We know that when it comes to longevity and health, people in communities live longer and are more healthy when they're connected, when they're in communities. People on all different kinds of diets thrive better when they have the least processed foods and the more connection. They're the two things that make the biggest difference, in fact. So yes, there will be some toxins going in for whatever is going on. And in the case of people with the Mediterranean diet, in my opinion, the alcohol is not serving them, but they're lucky enough that the toxic load isn't such that it's killing them yet. Right. But it's only about the toxic load, and they're healthy despite it, not because of it.
And I know that most of the reports that come out where there's a benefit associated with alcohol are funded by the drinks industry.
100%. They're always funded by the drinks industry. And also when you read I used to read those articles, and it used to say, oh, a glass of red wine is good for the heart. The way I read that was, that means I can have a whole bottle of Sauvignon. That's how I read it. Because for most people, if you genuinely are someone who has one glass of red wine every month or whatever, you don't even think about it. You are genuinely a mindful drinker, because drinking alcohol is not a thing for you. It's not, you don't wake up at 3 a.m. It's not a problem for you. It really isn't. You know, I'm a mindful kiwi fruit eater. I can have a kiwi fruit and then not think about kiwi fruit for 6 months. And then, you know what? I might go mad and have a whole fruit salad. I might have a, cheesecake made with it as well. Like, get me. But then if a doctor said to me, you've got to stop eating kiwi fruit, no problem. I don't have a problem with that. I'm a mindful kiwi fruit eater. I ain't going to join a group or even listen to a webinar, right? But the majority of people who get excited by those articles, like I used to, actually don't stop at one, because the unconscious mind is such that it triggers something that goes, oh, I think I need another one. And before you know it, you're back down that booze elevator. So I don't believe that I now don't believe that any amount of alcohol is good for you, safe or beneficial. I do think you need antioxidants. Of course I do. So absolutely have antioxidants, have red grapes if you want. Fantastic. But you don't need fermented toxic liquid.
Well, I think that's a perfect moment to end on, Janie. And gosh, wow, what amazing. Thank you so much, everybody, for being so interactive and so present. And I know we didn't get to all of your questions, but Janie does have an amazing group. She has an amazing podcast, TED Talk, books. I mean, a font of wisdom. And we'll share all the links that Janie's mentioned, and the supplements that you recommended, and your link there to Janie.
Yeah, I'll send all of that. And I'm always happy to answer questions, and do check out the Sober Club, because it's very low cost and you get all of your questions answered all the time.
So thank you,
But
thanks
thank you, Lucy,
everybody.
for hosting it. It's amazing that you're willing to offer this to people, because often people are so concerned in their workplace that they're going to be seen as the odd one out, and it's not true. We can make this literally. Wouldn't it be great when it's as normal to choose not to drink as to drink?
Yeah, it would indeed. Oh, look, lots of lovely feedback for you, Janie. Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much. Lots of really lovely feedback. Thank you, everybody, for sharing such lovely, lovely thoughts for Janie. And I'm very grateful for you coming in your time. Lots and lots of thank yous, lots of inspirational, lots of, yeah. So thanks so much, Janie. I'm
Brilliant.
really
No, I really
appreciate
enjoyed
it.
it. Thank you for being such a lovely group.
And we'll get everything out to everybody that signed up. So there'll be lots of people watching this on record as well. Thanks, Janie.
Thank you. I'll send you an email.
Thank you, my lovely. Take care.